there would never be a Felicia Fallon Farrah and Neosha type of situation going on. Hey y'all, welcome and or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. All right, y'all, I'm smiling like an idiot in that little intro part because I know that y'all was expecting 2 more videos last week, and I know a couple of y'all is gonna come for me. My sister already has. But y'all know we was doing the whole Halloween thing and we was getting into the spirit of Halloween, and I felt like what better way to get into the spirit than to ghost y'all. Boo. But seriously though, I was unprepared. See, like I didn't even do my nails this week. Okay, I had my baby's birthdays 2 days apart, honey. That is stressful. Anyways, y'all, let's just go ahead and hop into today's case. All right, y'all. So Crystal Umphes was born on September 16th, 1983 to her parents, Paul and Rhonda Umphes. And Crystal had always been the type of child who was the smart cookie. And this was from elementary school on through high school. And she could have easily furthered her education by going to college. But college just was never in the cards for Crystal. As far back as Rhonda can remember, Crystal's goal in life was to always be a mother. She never wanted to go to college. She never wanted to do the continuing education. She always felt that in her soul, her main purpose in life was to be a mother. And shortly after high school, Crystal would become pregnant with her first child, a little girl named Madison. And 3 months after giving birth to Madison, Crystal would get pregnant with her second child, who would be a little boy named Mason. And I do believe that this happened after Madison was born, but before Mason. But the boyfriend that Crystal had at the time, she and him ended up getting married. And I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that he was the father of Madison and Mason as well. And the 2 of them would end up having 2 more kids together, a little girl named Mackenzie, and finally another little girl named Michaela. But unfortunately, the relationship between Crystal and her husband, it wouldn't work out. And the 2 of them would divorce in 2009, leaving Crystal to be the single mom to 4 children at the age of 27. And I don't know exactly where she lived in Texas at the time, but she ended up moving from wherever her and her husband stayed to out of town to get a fresh start. And in order to provide for herself and her kids, Crystal would get a job as a CNA. But as we all know, CNAs ain't really paid what they worth because, let's be real, they are essential healthcare workers, just like a doctor or a nurse. So put some respect on their name. But like I said, we all know that they don't get paid what they're worth. And so Crystal, who was extremely talented and creative, figured out that she was really good at making pageant dresses and bows. And you know, y'all remember the show Toddlers and Tiaras and how they pageant dresses was all like blinged out and cute and all that stuff? Yeah, Crystal, she found a niche in doing this, and she would end up starting like a little side hustle selling her dresses and her bows. So she had a little side hustle to go along with her regular 9-to-5 to make ends meet. And like I told y'all, Crystal was creative and very talented, and she was good at a lot of things, right? But out of all the stuff that Crystal was good at, the thing that topped it the most was being a mom. Her mom, Rhonda, said that she was often in awe of the way that Crystal parented her children, and just watching Crystal be a mother to her children was just really mesmerizing to Rhonda. She just could not figure out how Crystal made everything happen, because even with everything that Crystal had going on, she always made sure that she made time for her babies. But every now and again though, Crystal wanted to have a little time away, a little adult time to herself without the kids. And this is what she was doing one night in the fall of 2011 when she just so happened to run into an old schoolmate named Nathan Maddox. Now, a little bit about Nathan. Nathan was born on October 5th, 1979 to his parents James and Kelly Maddox. And growing up, Nathan had a little bit of a rebellious streak. He found himself in a little bit of trouble that landed him in jail at the age of 19. And this is where he spent the next 4 years of his life. But while he was in jail, Nathan did a little bit of self-reflecting, and he realized that, look, this ain't what I want out of life. This ain't me. So when he got out of jail, he did a complete 180. He turned his whole life around because, like I said, that jail life, that was not for Nathan at all. Nathan got out of jail and he was on a straight and narrow. And this is when he met and married a woman named Kristen Westfall. And together, him and Kristen would have a child together, a little girl named Madison, who they called Maddie. Unfortunately, though, the relationship between Nathan and Kristen didn't last, and 6 years after the 2 of them got married, they would end up separating. And after the 2 of them separated, Kristen obtained custody of Maddie. And because of this, Nathan wasn't seeing Maddie as often as he would like, because Kristen, she was kind of being a little asshole, right? She was kind of blocking him from seeing Maddie, but he would get to see her every now and again. But after his separation from Kristen, Nathan, he kind of got out there. He was doing his own thing, minding his own business, out with one of his friends, when he ran into one of his old classmates, Crystal Umpus. And when the two of them ran into each other again after so many years of not seeing each other, everything was so natural. Everything just flowed. And even though neither one of them was looking for a relationship, you know how the saying goes, love happens when you're not really looking for it. And that's exactly what happened with these two. Crystal and Nathan's connection was instant. They automatically clicked. And y'all know how Crystal loved kids. Absolutely just adored kids. Not just her own, but kids in general. Nathan was the same way. He loved his daughter Maddie, but he was also like the best uncle. And so not only did the two of them connect on so many other levels, but they also connected on their level of love for the kids. They love the kids. And what made it even better was that along with Crystal's 4 kids whose names started with M, as a matter of fact, she had a Madison as well, Nathan's daughter's name started with an M. So if they decide to marry and blend their families, there would never be a Felicia Fallon Farrah and Neosha type of situation going on, because why does she not have an F name? I'm just saying, even though I think Neosha was number 1, I think she was born first, but we don't ever remember that. Because why? Because her name starts with an N, and so she always at the end of the list. That would never be the type of situation going on with Crystal and Nathan, because all of their babies' names start with M. It just works. And eventually Nathan's divorce would be finalized with Kristen. And 2 months after that happened, Crystal and Nathan ended up tying the knot in a small backyard ceremony with the kids present. And I don't know if the parents were present, but it was very small and intimate, just like they wanted. They didn't need no big hoorah. All they needed was themselves and the people who they loved around them, and that was good enough for them. But even though everything was going great between Nathan and Crystal, there was one thing that was missing out of Nathan's life, and that was his daughter Maddie. At this point, Nathan would have to go months without seeing Maddie, because when Kristen filed for divorce, she filed under abandonment, because Nathan will often go out of state to work and send back money. But in filing the divorce, Kristen said that Nathan abandoned her and Maddie, and that she didn't know where he was. And so that's why she obtained sole custody of Maddie during the divorce, and was able to dictate when Nathan saw Maddie and when he didn't. But Nathan wasn't going for none of that. He wanted custody of his child, whether that be full 50-50 or just visitations. He wanted to be able to see his child on a regular basis. And Crystal agreed with the fact that Nathan needed to be able to see his child. And so not only would Nathan work double shifts and a second job to afford a lawyer, but Crystal will also help him in the financial departments in order for him to be able to afford a lawyer to fight for custody of Maddie. And eventually the abandonment order was lifted, and Nathan was granted visitation to Maddie. And once Maddie started coming over on a regular basis and started getting comfortable, she fit right in with the rest of the kids. It was like the Brady Bunch. Everybody, except for, Greg and Marsha, because we ain't doing none of that. But y'all know what I mean. Everybody meshed so well. Crystal treated Maddie like she was her own, and Nathan treated Madison, Mason, Mackenzie, and Michaela all like his own. So there was never a divide between none of the kids. So at some point, Crystal and Nathan decided that they wanted to move their family from I don't know where, Texas, to Zavala, Texas, because not only would it be closer to his daughter Maddie for visitation, but it was closer to his job, and it provided a better school system for all of Kristen's kids. They would only be about a 20-minute drive away from Maddie, where she lived with her mom Kristen and her grandparents Paul and Letha. And at this point, Nathan wants to fight for full custody of Maddie, because in August of 2013, Kristen was arrested for possession of methamphetamines. And I want full custody of my daughter too. Because when Kristen was arrested, Maddie was put in the temporary custody of her grandparents, Paul and Letha, instead of being put in the full custody or even the temporary custody of her father, Nathan. I don't know why the court systems do that. I don't know why that's a thing. When the dad is willing to be active and present in the child's life, do they give the grandparents temporary custody while the mama going through something? But that needs to stop. If the daddy is functioning, not a danger to the child, and is willing and capable of taking care of said child, Please give the daddy day, baby. But anyway, so now instead of dealing with Kristen, Nathan would now have to deal with Paul and Letha in regards to the visitation between himself and Maddie. But Paul and Letha was not here for none of that. They would often deny Nathan's visitation with Maddie and not let her go at all with him. And there was a couple of times when Nathan and Crystal would have to pull up on Paul and Letha with their phones recording because they needed evidence that they was actually being denied visitation with Maddie when they went to court, because Paul and Letha wasn't letting up on Maddie. And because of this, Nathan hired another lawyer because this was some bullshit. Like I said, he was gonna fight for the rights to Maddie. He was gonna fight for her tooth and nail, okay? And thankfully this fight paid off because once again Nathan was granted visitation with Maddie. Now, the terms of this visitation agreement went as follows. The first 2 visits would be on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., but it would only be with Nathan and it had to be supervised. The next couple visits, I'm not really sure how many, but after the second visit, the visit would be still on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. But now Crystal would be able to be with Nathan, but it would still again have to be supervised. But after the visits with Nathan and Crystal supervised, the visits would then become that Nathan and Crystal would be able to take Maddie without any supervision for a set amount of time. I don't know if it was just a Saturday, if it was the weekend, I'm not sure. But the visits would no longer be supervised and Nathan and Crystal would be able to take her and do whatever with her. Now, the supervised visits that were to take place, the first 2 with just Nathan and then the following ones with Nathan and Crystal that had to be supervised, those visits would take place at Mount Carmel Baptist Church in Colemanville, Texas. And the first couple of visits went as planned. The 2 visits with just Nathan alone supervised, it went just fine. And there was a couple of visitations where Crystal and Nathan were present that went just fine. However, on January 18th, 2014, something went wrong with this visit because 911 dispatchers in Tyler County would get a call from a lady that was so frantic on the phone saying that she heard gunshots and she didn't know what was going on. She heard gunshots. She was so scared and she was so frantic that somebody else actually had to take over the 911 call to talk to the 911 dispatcher because she was yelling so bad that the 911 dispatcher could not understand what was happening. She couldn't understand what was going on in order to get help to the place where help needed to be. And so a lady named Marie Winters grabbed the phone and she started talking to operators and she said that she heard a couple of gunshots. She went out to check. She saw a lady on the ground and they need medical. So Tyler County police arrive on the scene, and once they do, they quickly realize that this is a little bit bigger than them. And so they call in the Texas Rangers because they don't only have one victim, they have 2. And Tyler County Police is a small police department. And so the Texas Rangers would be way better equipped to handle such a magnitude of a case. The Texas Rangers show up on the scene and they quickly identify the 2 victims as Crystal and Nathan Maddox and the original 911 caller as Letha Westfall, and the person who took over the 911 call, Marie Winter, she was the supervisor of the supervised visits. And when detectives talked to Marie, she said that a couple of seconds after Crystal and Nathan left the church, they heard gunshots and she went out to check. She saw Crystal laying on the ground, but she saw nobody in sight. She don't know where these shots came from. But then that's when she came back inside and 911 was called. And Letha Westfall said the same. So they start looking over the crime scene and they find a .30-30 caliber rifle shell casing. So now they know what type of gun that they're looking for. However, this is a very common gun that people have in Southeast Texas. So yeah, they know what they're looking for, but there's a lot of people that got that gun, so this ain't gonna be easy. They also see that Nathan and Crystal had both been shot in the head, but Nathan had also been shot in the hip. So Nathan was shot twice, Crystal was shot once. And the fact that they were both shot in this remote area at a church during a scheduled visitation, the police kind of felt like this was personal. And then they learned that the Westfall family lives only about a mile away from this church. And so what they want to do is get in contact with the Westfall family to make sure that they are okay, because there's a suspect on the loose and they don't know if the Westfalls are their next intended target, if they even have another intended target, if they even, like, they don't know nothing. They don't know nothing. So they want to get in contact with the Westfall family to make sure that they're okay. And so they ended up getting in contact with Cameron Westfall, who is Kristen's little brother, and they determine that the Westfalls are okay. So they go to the Westfall home to let Paul, Kristen, and Cameron know about the shooting that just happened at the church. And once they divulge the information about the shooting that just happened, Paul Westfall has a seizure and has to be taken to the hospital for medical attention. And while Paul is in the hospital recovering from his seizure, the detectives decide to talk to the rest of the Westfall family. So they start with Kristen. And Kristen is very cooperative. She says that, yeah, her and Nathan have some issues. They wasn't like the best of buddies, but that's her baby daddy. And you know, she ain't got nothing but love for him, even though she don't really like him like that. And she also says that her and her dad went to a store that was about 12 miles away from the house at around, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. And they made it back to the house at around 11-ish. And, I don't really know when she got out for this whole possession of meth thing, but she was present and out of jail for this interrogation. So when this whole thing happened, she was already out of jail. I don't know when it happened, but she was already out of jail. But with Kristen being so forthcoming and saying, we ain't had the best relationship, but I ain't hate the man, they move on to Paul. He's still in the hospital, but he's recovered enough to be able to be questioned. And Paul is also very cooperative with the detectives. And he even agrees to do a gunshot residue test. And so they test him, they test his hands, and the results of the test come back inconclusive. And so at this point, the detectives pretty much have nothing. But they ended up questioning Kristen again. And Kristen said that potentially because of Nathan's past, he had ended up getting involved with some type of gang, and they might have done this in retaliation of something, some type of gang activity, right? And so detectives obviously have to check out this lead, but nothing comes of it. And furthermore, the detectives find out that this ain't even that gang style. They not gonna kill nobody at no church, and they not gonna kill no innocent women or children. They had morals, okay? There was a gang, but they had morals. And so they determined that this gang theory, while plausible, it wasn't really a thing. But then 2 days later, the coroner's report come back. So it's January 20th now, and the detectives get the coroner's report. And the coroner's report pretty much says what they already knew. Kristen was shot once, Nathan was shot twice. But what they didn't know was that there were two different guns that was used on Nathan. So one was the 30-30, the one that they found the shell casings for. But the other weapon that was used was a 20-gauge shotgun. And so now they know that there was not only one shooter, but two. And even though this was great to know that there was two shooters, it would be another month before the detectives got a viable lead that would actually lead them to solving this case. So, about a month after the murders occurred, a man named Christopher Eves went into the police department and pretty much said that he had some information that would help them solve this case. And he said that he was often at the Westfall house, and while he was over there, Paul Westfall would often make statements about killing Nathan if he ever tried to take Maddie away from them. And the fact that it actually looked like Nathan was winning the custody battle between himself and Kristen, it just didn't sit well with Paul. And so Christopher said that Paul was willing to do anything to keep Maddie. And so with this information from Christopher, the detectives double back on the Westbrook family, and they go to the DA and they actually get an indictment for the whole family. Paul, Letha, Kristen, and her little brother Cameron for engaging in organized criminal activity. And so they went to the Westfall's house to arrest them, but the Westfalls had pieced out. They might have had gotten wind of what was about to happen, and they headed on out. However, they were only a couple of minutes down the road before they was pulled over and arrested. And once they all were in handcuffs, Paul proceeded to have yet another seizure, where he would yet again have to be hospitalized. And while Paul was in the hospital recovering from his seizure, the rest of the Westfalls were questioned yet again. And so first they started with Cameron. And Cameron denied everything. He said he don't know what this criminal activity is that they talking about. So then they move on to big sister Kristen Westfall. And Kristen denies everything as well. So next, they go on to the mama, to Miss Letha. And Miss Letha, she said she don't know nothing. And so now they want to question Paul, but they got to wait for him to recover from his seizure. And he does by the next day. And so the day after his recovery, they bring Paul in for questioning. And Paul, he denies everything as well. So ain't nobody in the Westfall family saying that they know nothing, because they say they don't know nothing. But that's only until the detectives say, look, your son Cameron, he only 17 years old. And at this point, with the information that we got, he looking at life in prison. But Paul, he don't say nothing right away. He actually gets sent back to his jail cell to marinate in his thoughts for a little while. And just about 3 hours later, he requests to talk to the detectives again. So he's brought out of that jail cell and taken back down to the interrogation room, where he was like, you know what? My son ain't even got to go away for life because I did it. It was me. I shot him. I did it. Lock me up, throw away the key. But detectives already know that there was 2 shooters. And Paul taking the rap, I mean, yeah, that's good. We kind of thought you did it already, but we need to know who was with you. So they press Paul a little bit more, and he ends up telling the detectives that the second shooter was his daughter, Kristen. And while the detectives are happy that they know who the second shooter is, they kind of feel like the whole family was in on it. So they want to know what part each player played. And so 5 days after Paul gives his confession and implicates his daughter Kristen as the second shooter, they bring in Letha. And this is when Letha admits that she heard her husband Paul talking about killing Nathan, but she didn't take him seriously. She thought he was just yapping at the mouth. He wasn't going to really do nothing. But that's it. She heard him say it, but she didn't really believe him. And during this interrogation, Letha said that she wanted to write a note to her son Cameron. And on this note, she wrote to Cameron, "Just tell the truth. They know it. Just tell the truth." So detectives give Cameron the note that his mom wrote. And after he reads this, he goes on to tell detectives that he did play a small part in this whole murder plot. He says that he got rid of the weapons at the request of his dad, and he told them where he got rid of the guns and stuff like that. And so detectives go to retrieve the guns, and they also get ammo from this dump site, and they test the ammunition against what was found inside of Kristen and Nathan, and it's a match. And everything that they got so far is great evidence, but they keep going because they need to make sure that they seal this case. And so they ended up getting the Westfall's phone records, and in those phone records, baby, Letha was way more involved than she said. So on the day of the murders, Letha sent a text message to Paul and Kristen saying they're here, meaning that Crystal and Nathan had made it there to visit Maddie. Then at 11:09 a.m., she texts Kristen and Paul again with the text message that said, "Get in place," pretty much instructing Kristen and Paul to be ready because Crystal and Nathan was about to get ready to leave the church. So she knew the whole time that this was about to take place. So pretty much it was a family affair. And with all of this information that was gathered, all 4 of the Westfalls was charged with 2 counts of capital murder. And in May of 2016, Letha pled guilty to the 2 counts of capital murder and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 28 years. And then Paul pled guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, which I don't know how Letha was able to get the possibility of parole after 28 years for capital murder when Paul got life without parole for first-degree murder. I feel like capital murder is like that. Like, that's the cap. She shouldn't have no parole, period. She shouldn't have that. But nonetheless, she in jail now. Anyway, Cameron ended up pleading guilty to tampering with evidence and was sentenced to 10 years. And then Kristen decided to take her chances at trial. There's always one. But yeah, she decided to take her chances at trial, but it didn't end well for her because on August 18, 2016, she was found guilty on 2 counts of capital murder and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. So she got the same sentence as mostly the rest of her family did. And like, now the whole family in jail just looking stupid. Just looking stupid in the face. Just dumb. But as y'all can imagine, the prosecution said that the motive for these murders was custody. January 18th, 2014 would have been the last supervised visit before Nathan and Crystal were able to take Maddie without any of the Westfalls being present. And so that was the motive. Custody. And now y'all don't even have Maddie. Maddie is now being raised by Nathan's sister. So in the end, Nathan's family still got custody of Maddie. And y'all in jail looking dumb. But yeah, y'all, that is all I have for today's case. Thank you all so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all in the next one. You look so stressed. Relax, baby. And shortly after high school, and 3 months after giving birth to Madison, Crystal would have, no, she wouldn't have the child, honey. It takes 9 months to carry a baby. 10, actually. And I do believe that this might have happened after Madison was born, but Mary, no. Who is Mary? Why do Mary keep coming up in my vocabulary? Is my great grandma trying to tell me something, honey? Because Mary just keep coming out my mouth so naturally, so flowy. But unfortunately, the relationship between Kayla and her husband just, her name ain't Kayla. Did I say 1989, child? That's the year I was born. I'm in 1979. Crystal obtained custody. Not Crystal. Kristen. Oh my God, this is gonna mess me up. But even though everything was going great between Nathan and Crystal, she was found guilty on 2 counts of what? Yeah. She was found guilty on 2 accounts.